Good afternoon. I'm Wendy Goldberg. I'm the Executive Director of the Tri-Faith Initiative. Thank you all for being here with us today. I hope that when you leave here, we have helped you to invite a discipline of hope into your life. And while I appreciate that this is a very difficult time and a difficult topic, that we will come together today and realize that it is our relationship and the human connection between us, perhaps, that is the most powerful in that discipline of hope, and that the relationships that we're building with and through the Tri-Faith Initiative is the example that the world needs. And you showing up here today really is important in that journey. So thank you for your time and your hour here today. I'd like to start by remembering those who have lost their lives on 9/11, whether that was on the day of or from illnesses related to 9/11, as well as those who perhaps have been the victim of intolerance and hate because of being Muslim or perceived as Muslim. And I would invite you, if there is someone's name in your life or that you're holding in your heart that you are thinking of who has been impacted over the 20 years since 9/11 of 2001, that you share that name in the chat. I'll go first. Anyone who you're holding in your heart or group of people. Feel free to do that as we continue this conversation. I'd like to introduce some of the people who are joining us for conversation today, so that you know a little bit about them. And then we'll start with you, Rick. Rick, can you tell us what is your name and your work, and then some of why you think that you were invited to participate in this conversation today?
My name is Rick Burns. I'm an Army veteran. I was an officer in Iraq and Afghanistan. Felt like that there was more work that would need to be done long-term in both those countries. And so at some point in there, I founded a nonprofit. And so we've been working primarily sort of focused on internally displaced women and children. We've got marketable skills training programs in Afghanistan. We have a kindergarten in Afghanistan, and worked a lot with the when ISIS was causing such devastation in Iraq. We did a lot of work with other small veteran-founded organizations to work with displaced families and women and children. So that's sort of the arc of my life right now.
Thank you. Miriam?
My family, I'm from Afghanistan originally, and so pretty much I am, and especially my family, is directly affected by everything's going on in Afghanistan, and also here for us, like none of us, although I'm here, but then again, maybe not directly, but indirectly affected big time with what's going on. Currently, I do have family in Afghanistan fighting to get out of the country because it's very difficult for them to live under this regime. And we don't trust them at all. So.
Okay. We'll have lots more time to hear more about that. Thank you, Miriam. Eric.
Hey everyone, Eric Servio, and I serve as Deputy Director here at Tri-Faith, but I'm also an Army veteran. I served as a flight medic in Afghanistan, got to save some lives, both American and Afghani. And now I work here in the community. I work with several nonprofits, and it's definitely something that has been heavy on my mind, the Afghanistan withdrawal. So I just hope to add a little perspective to this conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Before we go further, it feels appropriate to offer a prayer. So I'd like to read this to you. As we pray for the people of Afghanistan, we pray also for the members of the Taliban themselves. May they move away from the extremism that has marked their past and towards a more humane, nuanced, and mainstream understanding of Islam as it is understood and practiced by a great majority of Muslims. This understanding includes such a foundation of Islamic values as the centrality of mercy and compassion, care for the poor, and good treatment of all of those governed regardless of their religion. We also call upon all the nations of the world, especially our own, to open the doors to refugees from Afghanistan, particularly those who are most endangered by the Taliban's rule. Finally, we pledge to continue our work for peace and understanding among all people based on the Islamic principles that we share with most of the Islamic world. So, thank you for joining us again. I know this is a difficult topic, and I'd like to invite you, Miriam, to tell about your most recent trip to Afghanistan and how your experience was a month ago.
My experience a month ago until now, it's a huge difference. Amazing time with friends and family. Everything seemed so normal, so safe, as you and many other friends will keep texting me and asking me how I was doing. I was like, I'm fine, don't worry, everything is fine. Where I am is safe. I was able to go shopping. I was able to go out, have fun. I was able to go mountain climbing. And so everything was fine. I mean, this was something that I couldn't have think of in thousands of years, that this is going to happen in a matter of days. As soon as I leave the country, this is going to happen. The whole country will collapse.
Can you tell everyone why you were in Afghanistan and how long you were there, what you were doing there?
I have 3 sisters and a brother who lives in Afghanistan. And one of my sisters was killed by Taliban. This coming October would be 3 years. And she, when she was killed, her son just got engaged, and then 20 days later she was killed. So, and now her son was getting married, and the whole family, we decided to go and be there for him on his wedding day, to support him. So my whole family, my sister and her family, me and my family, my mother, my sister from Germany and her family. So we all went to Afghanistan to be at his wedding. So that was the main reason we all went to Afghanistan.
Tell us about the wedding.
Oh, well, it was a blessing. It was amazing. It was a lot of fun. Afghan weddings are very, it's dragged. It's not one night or 2 nights. It's a whole week or 2. Celebration after celebration, tradition after tradition, so much going on. But we had one difficulty, and that was the COVID. So all the halls were closed, and they wouldn't give permission to have a hall for the wedding. Up to the day before the wedding, we didn't know where would the wedding be at. So we're like, okay, where's the wedding? Because we did not even distribute the wedding cards up to the day before of the wedding, because we didn't know where are we going to get it. So is it going to end up being at home or a hall? So, and then eventually we got the wedding hall just for the woman. And then for the men, the tradition in Afghanistan is people have big personal orchards they love having that. And then so men ended up going at a private orchard, and then women ended up at the hall, saying that it's just like a simple small gathering, not a big huge wedding. Although it ended up that way, it was very crowded. So yeah, and then that was when we distributed the cards just the day before and saying, here's the location, you could come and attend. So it was a lot of fun. It was an imaginary wedding.
And then you went to the airport. What was the date of that you left? You were in Afghanistan from when to when?
It was July 6th until August 9th was my fly out from Kabul.
August 9th, right?
Yeah. August 9th.
And how many days later are the pictures that we see in the Kabul airport?
I think 2-3 days after that.
Right. So what was it like to be at the Kabul airport when you were there?
Everything was normal. Just, every year or every other year I was traveling to Afghanistan, taking my children. I wanted my children to know their cousins, their aunts, and live an Afghan life. Afghan kid, experience that, how Afghan kids live there. So I wanted my kids to have that experience. I had no restriction on them other than making sure where they go, as far as like for safety purposes, and who they should go with. So it was, this year there was so much changes to the airport that I did not even see it in America. I was like, wow, we have these in Afghanistan and we don't even have them in America. So that much development was in Afghanistan that was always, for me, was amazing to see that. And it was making me very happy to see those developments in people and in the society and into, streets and buildings and, like the airport. So yeah, I couldn't have imagined in a week or so, less than a week, this whole thing will be turned around.
So could you tell us, this audience, about the story of, you had done some shopping and were looking to get some jewelry. What happened with that story and the money and the complicated pieces?
Yeah. Just the day before, I went to Châteauneuf. Châteauneuf is like a very famous shopping place where a lot of foreigners go. There's a lot of traditional Afghan jewelry that you can customize for yourself and order and get it. So I love Afghan stones, like this necklace is one of them. So I ordered some customized jewelry over there, and then I was like, okay. And then I bought some other jewelry, which we run short on 2,000 Afghani. And the tradition in Afghanistan is people automatically, most of the people trust each other. So this was the first time I'm going to this store. I'm running 2,000 Afghani short, which is close to about, I would say, $40. So I was like, okay, can we bring this money to you tomorrow or the next day, shortly in the next couple of days? They're like, oh yeah, don't worry about it, just take it. So here I come home with the jewelry that I already purchased, and then there was some other jewelry that I ordered for them to, be ready for me. And so here the next day I fly out to USA, and I was supposed to send some money to Kabul for the jewelry that I ordered. And my niece was supposed to bring them with her because she got a visa to come to USA. And so here my niece texts me and says, did you send the money? I said, no, not yet. I'm going to do it. I promise, later today. She goes like, don't send it because there's no Western Union. I was like, why? Western Unions are all closed. So, and then that store is closed up to today. And then my niece was like having she was being hunted by you know, this, I have to take this money. It's like the trusting, the guy trusted me, and then now I have this 2,000 Afghani, and I don't want him to think that we run away with this money. So she would go, she was able to go just a few days ago, but then there was a phone number behind his phone number was behind his store because his store was still closed. And then my niece had to call him and say, hey, I have your money, where are you? He said, just give it to the security guy who was there and watching the stores. And I don't know where I'm coming, because he's from Panjshir, the area that are still fighting with Taliban, and he is in Panjshir. And so that's who my niece gave the money to, the security guy who was watching their stores. So
It's a lot to take in.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing. We're going to come back and hear more about you and your family and your story. But on behalf of everyone listening, I want to thank you for your vulnerability to share your story with all of us. And it's literally a world away. And many of us have never had an opportunity and only are hearing the experiences through headlines and media sources. So being able to hear from you is really powerful and beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Rick, I know that you have colleagues and loved ones that you are also concerned about. Can you tell us about your last couple of weeks?
Yeah, it's. I think I've been more eloquent at other times in my life than I've been lately. We work very closely with folks through our projects. I don't have a nonprofit inside of Afghanistan. I work through other local NGOs, small NGOs. One of them is a local women founded nonprofit on the ground. Obviously, associations with Americans and things like that cause some real serious challenges for folks. We try to be very conscientious of security and those things, even in the best of times. But there's always opportunities for the circle of trust to be violated by someone. The director of our programs is in Kabul now. We've been trying for about 2 weeks to get her out. I don't know how she ever trusts us anymore. There have been a number of initiatives to try to get folks into the airport when the airport was open before our military pulled out. It was a constant all night long, all day long, stand up, stand down, stand up, stand down. She has 4 children. If you check my Facebook, I've shared some of the comments that they've made to me, which pretty much just breaks your heart to think about children having to be faced with these kinds of adult kinds of violence and those kinds of things. We're still working. We're still hopeful. We're still trying to figure out ways, trying to figure out how things will work in this new world we find ourselves in. The problem, though, is I pretty much get a daily message from someone saying, help me. Just absolutely heart-wrenching, desperate pleas for help from thousands of people. And some of those are coming to me. I feel a little sorry for myself at times, but I realize that I'm sitting in Kansas right now and processing these things, and these folks are processing the exact same things under great duress. One of the things that I have on my desk, I printed out a photo the day after a particular city where we operate fell to the Taliban. We have a kindergarten there. We closed the school out of concern for the safety of our teachers and administrative staff. We locked the doors. Our director went by there the next day, and our little I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is she took a picture of our displaced kindergarten kids standing outside of a locked door, and I printed that photo out to remind me of a promise to get those doors unlocked and to somehow or another get those kids back into a class. They felt like it was a safe place for them in the midst of a lot of violence and a lot of sort of adult things going on around them. They felt like, it seems to me, that was a place of safety and a place where they could go. So all of this stuff, we're still working. We have some great concerns. I'm also a military veteran, so we have great concerns about the special immigrant visa program, which has been flawed. And from the very beginning, we had an estimated 18,000 special immigrant visa folks, translators and others that work closely with us, or serve in the same foxholes with us, who were languishing. Ostensibly, the reason for the special immigrant visa is to get people out of harm's way when their lives are threatened because of their service with us and their association with us. That's the intent behind the visa. It's a 9-month limit on it. Instead, we leave these folks languishing in dangerous areas of Iraq and Afghanistan while we process their visas. So we ended up with 18,000 of these folks in the pipeline before everything began. Everything kicked off with the Taliban taking over Afghanistan. So you can imagine what is now with that pipeline and all the additional folks, women and folks whose lives are very, very much in danger, now are further clogging that pipeline. And so we have great concerns and just great concern about that pipeline and trying to figure out how to get folks out of that pipeline. We're very grateful for the folks that we've gotten out. But we also know that there's a great reservoir of folks behind the dam that are waiting yet to be taken out of harm's way. And so all of that stuff, I'm not really sure exactly how to process all that stuff. There's some macro level policy levels, but there's an awful lot of local micro relationship kinds of things going on and happening as we strive to help those who are in very desperate circumstances right now.
Thank you, Rick. We're going to come back and have some more conversation about the different visa and opportunities to try to get family and friends out. But I'd like to go to Eric first to speak, Eric, about what has it been like for you as someone who served in Afghanistan the last couple of weeks?
Well, I definitely want to start with my heart goes out to the Afghani people, and I want to make sure that they're always centered in this kind of conversation, where I have a privilege again, where I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, with these feelings. There are people in Afghanistan now that are having to live those feelings, and I only spent about a year in Afghanistan, so it's a very limited slice. But in that time, I built relationships with Afghanis. We built relationships with the military, with the ANA or the ANSOF, so the Afghan National Army or the Afghan Special Forces. We flew all around Helmand, Farah, Herat, Kandahar, and I remember the local people there being very generous with their food. I remember eating a lot of lamb and rice while we were stationed elsewhere, flying around. But I think, like a lot of veterans, I think they build a relationship with the country and its people, and they get a lot of meaning out of their service. I am doing this to save this life, or to protect that woman or that child, or this country, and it really becomes ingrained in them. They derive meaning, and then seeing that being taken away, it loses some of its significance. And this is a conversation I'm actively having with my veteran friends is, well, let's remember, we did save a life. We did, save many lives, actually. We made a difference for specific people. And so we had to hang on to what we did and be proud of that. And then always look for ways, okay, now what can we do next? Look to the future. How can we support? How can we advocate? How can we make sure that our service extends beyond our limited time there? And I'm very glad to see that a lot of veterans have stepped up and have made ad hoc nonprofits or networks and are doing their part to continue to serve the people of Afghanistan.
Thank you. I think I want to make sure that I've made a proper connection to this being part of the Tri-Faith Initiative staff programming team's effort and my personal effort to understand how to have these complex conversations, but to put a connection of this conversation to 9/11. And so I want to share something on my screen here. This is a timeline, a course of events to remind us that the month before the incidents that happened in New York and Washington, that the Taliban had started to defend their position against religious freedom in the country of Afghanistan, and how the relationship with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda got us into a war. And then the series of events that happened in the United States that led to the US invasion. And I'm sure that you all have done lots of reading, or I hope that this inspires you to ask a question about what the foreign policy of the United States is. And when we look at other people's religious beliefs or how people run a country, are we culturally competent enough, is a question I'm asking myself, to use our military to decide how another country should be run. I had intended to have a guest, John Holloway, on this call, and unfortunately he had a medical emergency last night. But in my conversation with him, he reminded me, he was in the intelligence for the US Army for 15 years. And he said that the initial mission for the purpose outlined in this screen that I'm sharing was legitimate. But in his estimation, we lost our footing and we tried to do too much. That's part of what got us into 2 decades of conflict and chaos. And so all of that is the pain that's connected to misunderstanding related to religious pluralism, as I understand it. And when we talk about the reach of the Tri-Faith Initiative, we're asking ourselves to become more schooled in the implications of the power of the United States, and also to understand the impact of the lack of religious freedom or the lack of a celebration of religious pluralism. And I hope that we talk about that a little bit in terms of how this got us to where we are today. I'm curious if any of our panelists would be willing to share who are the Taliban? What do you know of them?
Well, as an Afghan who lives an Afghan life, Taliban are not an independent group. They are created, and they are created mostly by Pakistan. I'm going to make my own number percentage. I'm going to say 90% by Pakistan, and then the other 10% by Iran, because now all the Taliban are not one-handed. The rules are not the same. So the Taliban of the East are way different than the Taliban of the West, because the Taliban of the West are mostly trained by Iran. Taliban of the East, who are more ISS style or harsher, they are trained by Pakistan government. And General Durrani, who was the head of the Pakistani ISI, or I'm not sure what ISI stands for. It's like FBI of Pakistan.
Intelligence.
Yes, exactly. He on one of his interviews with what was his name? With one of the journalists from England in YouTube, he actually says, yeah, we did create a Taliban. We needed to create Taliban. And so unfortunately, right now, today, they are taking orders from those countries, from Iran and from Pakistan. And an example is my niece. My niece, this would be her second year in medical school in Herat. And so they would go and ask and say, okay, so are we back? I mean, can we go back to university? And they were told, oh, the boys can go back to the university, but the girls need to wait until we hear from Quetta. Quetta is a city from Pakistan. So why would you want to, take order from Quetta, or Quetta decides for Afghan girls if they can go and continue education or not? So that's the unfortunate part. And that's the big part, that Afghans do not trust Taliban, no matter what they say, because we believe that Pakistan will do their best to keep Afghans oppressed, keep them into poverty, keep them under their control, so they could rule the way they want to rule. And most likely, I'm not very knowledgeable on that, but then the little that I know, it's because of Pakistan is paranoid about India. So they want to have, and India and Afghanistan has a good relationship historically, not just today. Historically, they've been always in good relationship, and Pakistan does not want that. And then here they have the full control of Afghanistan, and they could, I'm guessing that in near future, you'll see a lot of Pakistanis moving in Afghanistan in the excuse of working in Afghanistan. Let's move to Afghanistan. I'm assuming that will happen pretty shortly. And so it's very unfortunate. And that's what Afghans do not want. And this will be an ongoing civil war in Afghanistan. I don't think if there's going to be any peace in Afghanistan. And one thing that it is kind of a question, I think, for the whole world, not just for Afghans. We were heading towards the development. Our young generation was heading toward advancement. Nobody was satisfied. They were hardly satisfied with a master's degree. They were aiming for doctor's degree. They were aiming for PhD. There were so many of those students got a scholarship to come to United States, to Europe, to Australia, around the world, even China, Japan. They got all kinds of a scholarship graduating, and most of them went back, including my nephew. He did all his education in Italy, and he had a chance. He could bring his. He said, no, my country invested on me. I want to go back to Afghanistan. And he went back to Afghanistan. He just opened his own law firm last year in Kabul. He was a professor at a university, and also he was working for some US forms or NGOs, and traveling around Afghanistan and having seminars for the lawyers around Afghanistan. And he was doing, and many, we have tons of examples like that. And so unfortunately, the whole thing went down the drain, the hardworking kids, the hardworking people, and the advancement, everything. And we don't understand why we attack. Like a lot of Afghan people, this is what they say. This is what their question is. If we were supposed to go back under the rule of the Taliban, why did you come? Why did millions of Afghans lost their lives? Why dozens of American armies lost their lives? If we had to go back to that 20 years ago, so why this whole thing, and then go back to the one thing that we came to Afghanistan and fight for?
Thank you.
So
Miriam, thank you again. I do need to make one little note here that's just a reminder, and that is that the message that Miriam so heartfully is expressing about her pain in the relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan is something we all need to know about, and yet we need to be careful about finger pointing in the United States. Many of our partners in the Tri-Faith Initiative and at the American Muslim Institute are from Pakistan. And these are not the people that we're talking about. We're talking about the intelligence agents of Pakistan who are controlling the Taliban influence. And so in the same way that many of us struggle with decisions of our government, even related to this, there are many in Pakistan and in Afghanistan who are fighting against this idea of Pakistan having that role. And so I just want to remind us that it's not a monolith. We can't make a broad stereotype to say that any one country is the problem. But clearly there's an influence here that has integrity and is something that we all need to be aware of and know more about. So I'm not discounting the honor of that.
And one note on that, honestly, the Afghan community and Pakistani community, they love each other. They share so much, not just religion, culturally wise. They share more. I know many friends who are married to Pakistanis. And again, just like you said, it's the politics that make these problems. It's not the people, you know. I mean, there's a lot of time the people stand next to each other. And then a lot of Pakistanis people, they do not even know these stories. They think it's not, they have no idea, because of course they're not gonna go tell them that. But you know, I mean, there's nothing personal against the people. It's always the politic that I would blame, and that it goes around the world. You know, it's not the people. Just like all of us people are standing next to each other and supporting each other, regardless of the religion, of the place of birth, and all that. I consider myself, you know, from the earth, not from Afghanistan, not from USA, not from any other country. Consider myself human, and I will stand next to justice, no matter who. Even if it's my son, I'm not going to stand next to my son if my son is unjust. I'm going to take the side of the just. So that's the human part of me and every person who stands for humanity and justice. I think that should be.
Thank you. Rick, related to a similar question of who is the Taliban, can you speak to us about the Taliban and women's rights? I know that you've done a lot to defend displaced women, and give us your understanding.
This is, you know, we live in a very complicated world that we try to sort of simplify. I think Miriam hit on several issues that make this very complicated. You know, the relationship with the ISI, the Afghan government. But one of the things that I always sort of gives me hope is that we have 20 years of empowered women. We have 20 years of women traveling abroad and seeing the world, and they're the young men as well. They've seen the world in a different place, in a different way, and they've been able to experience the world in a different place. It is horribly unfortunate that the Taliban has such a diametrically opposed view of women than what's been developed over the last 20 years. It is amazing. The women I work with are so absolutely courageous. You can hear it in Miriam. You can hear it in her voice, in her stories. These are very courageous, ambitious women who the Taliban's now going to have to contend with in many ways. I don't think they can go back to where they started 20 years ago. They'll try, but I don't think you can completely put that genie back in the bottle. And having said that, there's an awful lot of suffering that's going to happen because of it, because of a very short-term view and a very archaic and just a very wrong-headed view of women and what women are capable of doing. But I just one quick story. I did some interviews with Afghan women that I work with and talking about education. And there were two of the women had been refugees in Iran during the Taliban's first rule. One of them graduated from high school. She couldn't go on further because she was an Afghan refugee and the Iranian government wouldn't let her go further in education. So she started a school with just a few kids. Her dad was saying, no, stop, don't do this. Her mother said, I'll talk to your dad. She ended up over about 3 years, she had about 300 kids. She negotiated with a store owner to use his space in the back of his store. He saw the potential of selling pencils and notebooks and things like that, and so was willing to sort of hide them back in the back there. But she stepped forward and did that. She ran for a provincial council and won. She campaigned openly for that. Another of my friends is a published poet and artist. She ran for parliament and also won a seat on the provincial council, but subsequently she didn't win, but she ran. These were very courageous things to do, even prior to the Taliban being here. And so if there's anything that gives me hope, it's that somehow or another, hopefully with our support, hopefully with the world's support and pressure on the Taliban, and using whatever leverage we have with them, that we'll be able to support women in their efforts to gain the foothold that they had already gained over the past 20 years.
Thank you. That's a good transition. We have about 15 minutes left. I'm wondering, Rick and Miriam, could you share with us maybe a short version? I know this is a long story, but a short version of what's the paperwork look like to try to get someone out of Afghanistan?
First, there's an immigration form where you can apply for your family members to come. That one takes years and years. I applied for my sister's almost 7 years ago. And so I called, but currently the situation is different. So that's one form. And then there's another form that currently I am working very hard to get my family out. It's called the, let's see, I have them in front of me.
I-131.
I-131, which is the application for travel document. That one is a long process and needs an affidavit of support from an organization and a family member. And then it has a big fee, $575, and that's per person. And which would cost, if I bring my family, that would cost me like thousands of dollars if I have to pay that fee. So it's just,
I'm sorry, in addition to the fee for filing, the people who come with that parole status don't receive any benefits from the United States government. So that would be the financial responsibility of the person who signed the document once they've reached America. Where a person who comes with refugee status would get up to 3 months of social services.
That's a if I go that way. So yeah, I mean, I'm desperately working to get that form completed for my family so they could leave the country as soon as possible. Because currently for Afghans, today until tomorrow is a long time. never know. It's very unexpected. Everything is very unexpected. You never know what happens until tomorrow. And my family especially is one of those families who are vulnerable because of my brother worked a high position job with US Army. And also one of my sisters who was killed by Taliban 3 years ago. If, like, let's say Taliban find out who their mother was, their life could go in danger another way through that. And so my brother-in-law was, advisor of like the economic situation of our province for Ashraf Ghani, which is the president. So that could, be another danger. So it's like danger after danger. They're like, in a row for my family. So, and also like one of my sisters have 5 daughters and she's alone, no man in their family. So it's like all 6 women in the family. And so let's say they can go to the universities, they can go back to the universities, but what if a Talib likes them? I mean, do they have the choice to say no? You know what I mean? A long time ago, that was the thing. If somebody come and ask for your daughter's hand, if you say no, there's a Talib gonna come knock at your door and say, with the gun and say, you have to give this daughter to them. So it's just like the life of these girls are in danger in another way. So it's just, I'm working desperately to get that done and submit them as soon as possible to get them out of the country. So
Rick, Miriam is speaking about one kind of application. There's kind of a, sounds so insensitive, but pecking order to the process of application. Can you speak to the different levels of those applications that you are seeing and kind of the order that the U.S. is processing them?
I wish I could. I wish I understood the system. The problem is we can't know what happens on the other side of the wall when they do whoever the intelligence organizations or whatever put their fingerprints on it. We don't see that. We can't know how to do better. We can't know how to put a packet together better for a special immigrant visa applicant because we don't know what they're looking for, or are we told what disqualifies them? Now, I understand there's some security issues there, but there's some real issues with guys just simply languishing. Now, I will tell you, if you want to make me mad, sure, none of you want to make me mad, but if you were to want to make me mad and push a button, it would be tell me that our special immigrant visa guys are not vetted. And I'm hearing this now from folks. When you got a guy that was sitting in the same foxhole with you, worked with your team, and you recommend that guy after having spent almost a year with that guy, offering to turn your back on that guy, I mean, putting your life in the hands of that person, and you tell me that person isn't fully vetted. It makes me very angry. And it makes a lot of us veterans very angry when we see such disregard and such dismissiveness by politicians or others who come up with this argument that they're not fully vetted. And just nearly every case, they have already been fully vetted by folks that have worked with them on the ground. And so that process again is jammed up. It's jammed up into a system that's supposed to take 9 months, but usually takes years to get them through, while they're sitting in the very situation that we're trying to rescue them from, which makes no sense at all. So our members of Congress who are now complaining about that, if they have not been speaking out against that before, they should have been, because we've been telling them it's a problem for years now. The other visa is a P2 one because I have a registered nonprofit in the United States. Congress expanded the visas out to a priority 2 visa, which allows me to recommend, for example, the director of our programs over there to recommend her, refer her for what's called a P2 visa. Also, news organizations are also included in that. But it's a very broad-based thing. So, but again, we had 18,000 SIV, or special immigrant visas in the pipeline that have been sitting there for years now, many of them. Now you add all of the other visas on top of that, and you got a very clogged up system. State Department is not as big as people want to believe it is. State Department, if you talk about pure numbers, is an extremely small, spare organization. And so we've added all of these all of these visas in a pipeline that I'm sure is overwhelming. I have some sympathy for them, but not enough to let them off the hook. They need to push these visas through, and they need to do it. And if we have to bring more folks on, or Congress, I don't know. Look, that's policy level stuff. I don't. That's not me. But somebody needs to fix this problem. This is a problem. The Afghan problem is a problem within a larger problem. We still have Iraqis, and that program has gone away. The SIV program has been was sunsetted several years ago, but we still have people in the system. We still have Iraqi SIV folks that are waiting to be adjudicated and brought to America. So anyway, sorry, I sort of inflames me a bit when I talk about it, but it's an extremely flawed program, and it does injustice to our allies, our friends, our comrades in arms, people who risked their lives in large measure greater than we did, because many times they were having to go home after work. And we were sitting behind a nice perimeter with young guys with big guns. So anyway, I'll stop there because I'll go on all day.
Thank you. Thank you for your passion. I don't know how we even try to be politically correct when lives are at risk. And I don't know how you're being patient, Miriam. It's difficult to witness your pain, let alone to imagine what it feels like. I want you to know that a couple things that we're trying to do at the Tri-Faith Initiative. One is really immediately, we are hearing that as refugees come, they're coming with the clothes on their back, and we have started to collect some clothing that is culturally appropriate, and we have had an outpouring of interest in bringing those clothes. We are not collecting money for families, but I'm told that the Refugee Empowerment Network locally is a really good place if you are so inclined to support the Afghani community that we hope will soon be in Omaha. Any outreach or opportunity that you have to encourage the governor to welcome or invite refugees to Nebraska would be appreciated. And there are a number of efforts related to that. We'll try to put a link in that in the follow-up link here. And your prayers certainly help. And we hope that you will continue to keep abreast of what's going on, but also to pray for the people who have been mentioned and discussed here today, and to hold Miriam and Rick in your hearts. I want to invite Jeremy Fricke, who's our education director, to tell you a little bit about a program that we have tonight. Should you be interested in continuing to learn about the implications that have come from 9/11.
Yeah, so really quick, I mean, tonight it's a little bit more somber topic than some of our Abraham's whiteboards tend to be, but it's really important that we look at our history here in the United States, in particular with the backlash against the Muslim community and those understood to be as part of the Muslim community. This program tonight, which is the first link that Sierra posted, that one is specifically to allow us to look at those things. We're going to look at, what are the ways that this changed American culture? What are the ways that things got better or worse over time in the last 20 years? And there will be some attention to the hope that changes have made, particularly in the last few years. So I do invite you to come to that. if you're interested. And if you can't make it, just register and you'll get the link to the video afterward.
Thank you, Jeremy. So that's tonight at 6:30. Then on 9/11 at 7:30, we will gather outside of the Tri-Faith Center, and we will have a mix of a vigil to remember the lives lost since 9/11, and also to have an opportunity to hear from 3 storytellers who will tell about their personal journey, their story, and how 9/11 has impacted their identity. I've heard the stories. It's worth coming. Invite your friends and family. It'll be a really beautiful night. Hopefully the weather agrees with us also. There's some artistic elements to that as well that I think you won't be sorry if you join us. I put a link to our feedback survey. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today, but I'd like to invite Eric, you first, if there's anything last that you would like to say, and then Rick, and then Miriam.
Just thank you all for coming out, and please continue to have the people of Afghanistan and the veterans that have served there in your thoughts and in your prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, I'm fine. I have lots of good friends reaching out to me. The Afghans are not. And all of our prayers and thoughts and actions, our political activism needs to be focused on not forgetting the Afghans and the things that they're suffering right now. There's great humanitarian need, but there's also great longer term policy implications that we need to sort of consider and make sure that we don't forget about all the elements, all the complicated elements that are involved in our relationship with Afghanistan and the Afghan people.
Thank you, Miriam.
And I'm gonna say, one thing that we Afghans need the most is your prayers. It's not like 1 or 2 person, it's a whole nation that are suffering. Whether in Afghanistan or outside Afghanistan. I live in America pretty much all my life. I grew up here. But because of my family, I am very connected. I was born in that land and very connected and going and all that. And witnessing, seeing that more than 30 million Afghans are suffering. No matter how rich or poor they are in the same level of emotion, of broken heart, of betrayal, of the world, I mean, I don't blame just one country or 2 countries. I blame the world for what's happening in Afghanistan. We just need prayers, and please keep us all in your prayers. And I'm hoping one day comes that all these problems go away, and Afghans, because these Afghans, they deserve a peace of mind. All of them grow up they are born and grow up in war, in injustice. It's a small country. It's a very rich country by natural way, but very small population, and the reason is because they're dying, they're being killed. There's not a single family without a loss, including my family. I lost a sister, I lost uncles, I lost cousins. There's not a single family without pain. And just keep us in your prayers so this whole thing go away one day.
We will do so. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.